Mr. Aaron Shaver.
Hello, my fellow dad guy. How are you?
You're in some unusual location today.
I am in a secure bunker right now. So,
Enjoying vacation at an undisclosed location
undisclosed location. Yeah.
somewhere.
But this is one of my favorite things to do. So I was like, hey, guess what we're going to do on PTO? We're going to do constructive security because you came up with a topic for us.
Yeah, this is we're going to talk about ransomware today, and I'm in a mix it up mood. We're going to skip the whole, our intro. We're just going to get to the meat of what.
You didn't prepare me for skipping the intro.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk about ransomware today.
Oh, okay.
And should be a good conversation. I saw something on LinkedIn that really piqued my curiosity, so I figured it'd be worth talking about today.
And there's been a robust conversation going on in one of our CISO Slack channels about the merits of what you're going to share with us today.
So my
homies. To our viewers, this is an extremely well-vetted topic that we're going to talk about today.
Awesome.
AKA, we've criticized Brian a lot.
That's most days, but it's to everybody's benefit. This time they get to enjoy the benefits. All right. Well, here's intro. Here we go.
Do it up. Great job. Question mark.
Much shorter.
It is. It'll give you more time to talk. I see you're optimizing your talking space today.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So we're talking about ransomware, and that's a huge topic for me. It seems like when we talk to people out there in companies, whatever your security strategy is, this is pretty clearly the number one thing on people's minds in the security space. It's the big, you can have whatever security strategy, whatever you're trying to accomplish, and you might have an insider threat risk or, whatever, but ransomware definitely in the last year or two has become the thing, especially with all the news over the last year. It's the number one thing that I find people, when you really get down to it, what are you worried about? There's that old cliche question of what keeps you up
at night?
What keeps you up at night? And ransomware, without question, to me is what keeps people up at night. And it's definitely, because I did 25 years in corporate security, corporate IT. It's the thing when I see those news stories, not to rub it into people doing the work all day, every day, still these days, but it's the thing I look at. And usually my first thought is, oh, I'm so glad I'm not back working this on a hands-on day by day basis. Cause it's tough.
It's a tough situation.
It's a tough situation.
Well, I have a slightly unpopular opinion about ransomware.
Oh, do tell.
So back in the day when we used to attempt qualitative and quantitative risk analyses, we would look at, shut up, nerd. We would look at likelihood and impact.
Right.
And there was not always a direct relationship between them, right? They were inversely proportional in many cases, where if it was really high impact, it was relatively low likelihood, right? I would get involved. So the company I worked for, we had like a bunch of, tier 4 data centers, and people were always worried about what we called smoking hole. Like, my data center is going to become a
crater. Yeah,
a crater. And I need to protect against that because that's pretty high impact, right? But the likelihood is like when's the last time a data center has become a smoking hole?
Yeah, the last time one got hit by an asteroid. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Like a train derailed and blew up my data center. That's what we would work on. And then the things that were high likelihood, like human error, maybe inside threat actors, were, in the whole scheme of things, were like relatively low impact.
Right.
And then we have ransomware that comes around. And you say over the last year, I'm going to say over the last 5 years, that now the single, highest likelihood is also one of the highest impacts. And so my unpopular opinion that is, if you don't feel like you're well postured to protect against ransomware, kind of nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people agree with that or not, but that's my recommendation as we get.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would agree with that. I think that that it's gone, using your premise, it's so likely and it's so likelihood is it's happening to companies all the time.
It's maybe a 9 out of 10 on the scale. Maybe
yeah, correct. And impact, it's a crater impact. I mean, it's the kind of thing that can absolutely.
It's not quite a 10 on the impact, but it might be a 9.5 or a 9.
Yeah,
it's pretty bad. Yeah,
could put your company out of business. Might definitely damage your your reputation with customers.
And to be clear, when you say like put your company out of business, I hear people say that all the time, and it's kind of FUD stuff. It's not FUD when you say that.
Right.
It's he's being honest.
Genuinely, all of a sudden something happens one day, the boom occurs, and then everyone in your company is sitting around unable to do work, unable to even, a factory where you produce things, people unable to produce things, factory lines.
In your neck of the woods, we had some pretty big hospitals that were diverting patients last week because of that.
Which is another, as I said at the time, people outside of healthcare here divert ambulances, and I don't know. I mean, maybe that doesn't seem like a big deal.
It's huge.
That's a really, really big deal.
When I worked in health, I was the CIO at a health system. We had a 7-day power outage because of an ice storm. We didn't divert patients because of that.
Yeah,
it takes nigh an act of God to divert patients.
Yeah. I worked at a hospital system where we diverted ambulances twice in the 100-year history of the hospital.
Yeah. So it's a deal where he's not. Yeah. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah. So, I'm kind of further with the likelihood, this kind of is from the site. Information is beautiful. I love their charts. There are a lot of circles on here. There are a lot of circles on here, but the basic concept is every circle is a ransomware incident over the last several years. And the size of the circle isn't necessarily, you would think it might be like size of ransom asked for or paid. It's actually the size of the organization that was impacted. Mm-hmm. And kind of what you see even,
do I see Accenture on there yet?
Yeah, no, yes, it's probably, is it in there?
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Give it till tomorrow.
But, what you need to pay attention to is as many circles in 2020, I would bet, as all those prior year. We're not even, we're just a little over halfway into the year, and we're already probably have as many circles as all the rest of the years combined. So, boo. Yeah, bad thing. All right.
Stop telling us depressing.
So to the major bit of content, this was the chart I saw on LinkedIn and just said, boy, that's fascinating. I'm gonna grab that. Yummy. Throw that into my deck. And like you said, we have this little discussion group with some of our pals where threw this out for discussion and said, I really like this. I think it's accurate and tells us something important. But we, with that group, we try things on for size sometimes. Like, does this seem, is there anything we would add to or take away from, sort of the engineer?
Because this group will tell us if we're stupid, just like out of the gate. There's no pretense.
This is good, but here's some major thing that it's missing. Right. And we'll add some of that benefit. I'll take other people's great thoughts and present them as my own, certainly, in this discussion. But some things that it comes from the New Zealand government. Their CERTNZ, CERT being Computer Emergency Response Team, and every major modern country has one of those. But
this diagram gives me anxiety now that I read it.
That's it. Why does it? Why?
Oh, just some of the. We'll talk through the individual details here, but
cool. Well, so CERTNZ published this, and it's designed. I think people have gotten to the point where they're very well aware of ransomware as a risk, as an issue that has to be defended against in cybersecurity. But a lot of people, if they haven't done a lot of research, or if they haven't been involved in one of these events really closely themselves, may not have all the perspective of how these things happen and how they flow. And, on that day where you were impacted, what were the things that led up to that? What were the pre-steps? So where I'm going to dive in on this thing is actually, I'm going to do a little bit out of sequence today, but I'm going to start where most people become aware of the fact that they have a ransomware issue, which is on the day of impact. And it also, starting there, helps. There's another old cliche of begin with the ending in mind. That those bad guys, the criminals that deploy ransomware inside of your organization, you start with the three goals that they're looking for, early on, and that kind of defines what they're trying to do, how they move around in the organization, and how they get to those three goals. So certainly, we have this one that's
traditionally what people think of with ransomware.
Absolutely, this is the primary focus of, well, of course, they want to encrypt your data. Slightly less well known for people that aren't really close to the security industry or impacted by it, but your average hacker, because they want to be successful at their ransomware campaign, they definitely do want to encrypt data and do that well and successfully and quickly.
If you have good backups, pretty quickly you can restore encryption.
Well,
data.
and that's an interesting point too. Good backups. That there are plenty of people that have accurate backups, but are not in a position, like all the data is there, but people who have all that data, maybe you even, you have backup tapes that you send out the real old school way.
My LTO4 drive doesn't work anymore though, and I can't restore them.
Right. So there's that problem, or there's the problem of when everything gets encrypted all at once. And I've definitely seen many examples of this, that companies start doing the math for the first time ever because they've never modeled that out before. How long is it going to take us to restore?
We create a boot storm or a restore storm that
Correct.
just overwhelms capacity.
And when your average company says that restore time to restore the backups is going to be measured in days or more likely weeks or even months, I've seen, again, I've worked in organizations where if you had to restore everything, it would be actually measured in years. Then that's the point where people say, I can't be out of business for barely days and definitely not weeks and months, because, a week without being able to serve customers would typically be the end of most organizations. So destroy backups, that's another goal. And then this data exfiltration. This is
a little bit newer.
It is. I think one of the first examples of that was late in 2019, and I wish I had it in my notes. I was gonna look that up, but it escapes me.
We're gonna take your data and then we're gonna share it publicly if you don't pay.
Correct. And that data exfiltration is all about threatening or exploiting the.
Why they're doing it though?
Why they're exfiltrating.
Why they've added that level of complexity to their attack?
Well, it's another encouragement to get people to pay for.
It's because people are doing better at their backups in DR.
Oh, right.
And so if I'm a threat actor and I encrypt your stuff and you've got good backups and you restore it, you're not going to pay the ransom. And so they've started to add the data exfiltration threat so that even if you have good backups, you can still hold a ransom. Yeah.
Well, and we've seen some evolution in this space as well of not just, not just threatening you directly with your exfiltrated
Your partners.
partners, but yeah, reaching out to your business partners, reaching out to your customers and saying, telling your customers, telling your business partners, we have impacted this organization. We, the bad actors, we've gotten into their organization and stolen your data, customer, or your data, business partner. And if they don't pay, we're going to release your data actually on the internet.
And stop me if this is taking you off your thought process here, but the one piece that gives me the most anxiety about this chart is the destroy backups.
How interesting. How so?
I do a lot of, vulnerability and attack surface analysis for people, and you constantly get calls from me of like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What is like the number one thing I always complain about that's in the top 10 softest targets in the organizations we see? Oh
yeah. And I'm not going to name a particular product.
Yeah. Don't name a product.
Yeah. Cause I don't think it's the product's fault, but the store, definitely the backup systems and the storage arrays we see as being configured insecurely all the time. And I was shocked by that when we'd see that initially, but I think it's because you drop these backup systems into a network and the desire is to get them, set up and working as quickly as possible. And they're just designed to take in information from all over the place. And so that goal of, I want all the systems on the network to be able to back up to this backup system.
And typically they're named with the product.
Yeah.
Backup server 1 and metadata server 2. And you're telling us exactly what they are. And so if I had one thing out of this, I know there's a lot of like visibility around phishing and password guessing and managing exploits. And we're even getting into network segmentation. If I were in your shoes as a listener today or a corporate IT person, after this, I would stop and go check the hardening of my backups. That'd be the first thing I'd do.
Yeah. Again, give me 2 or 3 more thoughts. When hardening, if I say, okay, I'm going to go harden my backup server, what are 2 or 3 things I should look for to go do right away?
Yeah. I guess the first thing that I would do is I would turn the host firewall on and I'd create a whitelist of assets that can talk to me as a backup server, right? Because it's one of the easiest things we call it nano segment with a host firewall, because typically you have a pretty discrete list of servers that are backing up to it. So it's not like a super complicated application. I would do that. I would also probably target.
So real quick, maybe all the users' laptops or VPN clients, or maybe the conference room, the conference room telephones don't need to be able to talk to the backup server. Okay.
Right. Yeah. My Apple TV doesn't need to be able to talk to my backups, or I won't mention product names. Like whitelist the servers in your data center that need to back up to it. And if you are backing up laptops directly, build a second server for that one, or stop doing that and just back up the file servers anyways, you're going to get me started on that.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other episode of constructive security. Yeah.
Create a firewall whitelist. And if you go to your box and it doesn't have a firewall whitelist on it, do that next week. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. The other thing that I would do is I had to make sure it's fully patched and on a supported operating system. I see tons of them that are still running Windows 2008. And oh, by the way, you still have all 3 versions of SQL installed. Clean it up just a little bit. The third thing that I would do is I would target sys level 2 hardening benchmarks for it. Download the sys level 2. Even if you're going to keep Windows 2008 or you're on 2019, go download the sys guidelines for it and apply that to your backup server. You'll thank me in 6 months when you get attacked with ransomware. You'll be like, they didn't get our backups. So those would be the 3 things I'd do first.
Cool. I love it. Okay. Well, we're going to go back. Having started on the right-hand side of the screen, we're going to go back on the left and say, knowing that that's the ultimate goal in mind, now let's go to well, where do the bad guys and gals start? How are they getting into the organization? And so, here it's got each of these kind of dots on the left, that these are starting points. And this was probably the area of most discussion amongst our group of pals of not a lot of disagreement that these are the right things, maybe a little more slicing and dicing of.
Yeah, they were getting real technical on the wording of it.
Yeah, correct. And me as well, like
the premise stands, though.
The premise stands. I think this is really good and accurate. But and so to go through these, so phishing is one of the ways people are working to get into the organization, and oddly enough, we'll distinguish phishing from email as a method into the organization, and hopefully that'll become clear in a second here. But phishing, the purpose of that phishing being to gather people's valid credentials. So the kind of phishing where it's a click here and log into this, your password is expired, or you need to
I got one of those this week.
Yeah.
Your employer wants you to update your Office 365 credentials. Click here, right?
So all of those click here and type in a username and password style phishing emails designed to go after getting valid credentials.
And usually they're like mimicking some legitimate site. They've taken screen scrapes from it or something.
Yeah.
But if you look at the DNS, like the URL, it's got some weird domain or
I'm even here I've just developed a practice of, even when I think they come from inside of my company, just don't use the links and emails.
Just go to the website
to go log into sites. If there's something I need to do, I'll be the person. I'll err on the side of not ever clicking the link in the email, and that's a good user practice. As well, there are different. If you're setting up the IT or security of a company, there's sandboxing or web URL email sandboxing solutions to test out those links. And
there's even DNS services that are going to like scrub that URL before it allows you to click through. So there's a couple ways to handle that.
Yeah, but just generally be aware of if you think about this, one big thing that keeps people up at night, phishing, of course, is one of the major ways that bad guys are getting into the organization. And they're doing that phishing, one reason to collect valid credentials. There's also, this next one, I'm going to talk about password guessing. And when we say password guessing, again, that's an interesting one. This we probably had the most discussion about. But this is, rather than going and asking the user for the username and password, which I said phishing. It also could be, there are known approaches where people call users up on the phone and just simply ask them for their username and password.
But that's more of a phishing attack.
That's a phishing attack as well. Password guessing, by comparison, all sorts of approaches to password guessing. So historically, classically, we think about, brute force attacks. So that would be,
it's like from The Office, if you're a fan, when Dwight's like, try 000 000. Okay, now try 000 001.
Yeah, correct. So that brute force approach. That's a password guessing approach. Another password guessing approach would be use of a dictionary.
Attack.
So either an English or whatever language dictionary, or a password dictionary.
Right.
I know these are common.
It's just a list of common passwords.
Yep. Or even dictionaries of, here are default passwords for different kinds of systems that are, what's the default password for a Cisco router?
I feel like there was just a NAS vendor who has been recently hit with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, sometimes there are these secret built-in credentials people don't even know about. Forget about default. It's the backdoor credentials or things like that. And so, again, all approaches to password guessing. Kind of the last one, and this is a type of dictionary attack, But there's a type of password guessing called stuffing, which is when I'm a bad guy and I break into a company and maybe break into a website and download their username and password
Because
list.
people recycle usernames and passwords.
Correct. I go take that just one time. If I stole Aaron Shaver's username and password from his Edsel Ranger car fan site that he's a member of,
and the password is I heart unicorns.
Yes, correct. Then I would go one, not even so much brute force, but I would go try one attempt of that username and password at 1,000 other sites on the internet to see
where it works.
Okay, so that all comes back to valid credentials, and that used in the case of ransomware to get into internet exposed services, meaning what are things I can use those valid credentials to log into. And there, Office 365 is a common, so many people using Office 365 for their business email, but that's a common thing.
That one worries me a little bit less than the other one we see, which is
Yeah.
people in their stinking VDI environments that they leave internet exposed.
All
And
sorts
people
of that's the most common one. Any type of remote access, remote desktop. And so that could be Microsoft RDP remote desktop that I'm using those credentials to get into. It could be any of the VPN clients that are out there, that those are that remote access. That even more so, certainly email maybe gets me more credentials and more access, but that's kind of what's the real golden thing people are looking for? They're looking for remote access into your organization.
Yeah, but you give me email, I have less command and control.
Correct.
You give me RDP, I got a lot of command and control.
Now I've got a box inside of the company.
I got a thingy I can work with.
Yeah. Another path.
We got just a couple minutes here.
Yeah. So exploit vulnerability,
movement.
This is just unpatched things in those same services. That's another one where VPN has been common. And then email, separate from phishing. The reason why there is email is a path to send documents, malicious documents, malware that people are going to click and open. Often PDF files, although that's getting more and more patched. All the thing people use all the time because it works are Office macros. And the pro tip there is that since 26, what?
The pro tip is don't.
Well, the pro tip there is it is hard for people to just simply turn off all the macros. You'd be blown away how many finance and accounting departments
like
grind
all
to a
finance
halt.
in the world runs on Excel.
Macros. But there's a feature since Office 2016 that's called block macros from running in Office files from the internet. And what that does is that Outlook can keep track of where did this file originally come from. Yeah. And did I get it from another person in my company, or did it come from some random person on the internet via email? And I can block the macros for random people on the internet versus allow them for people inside of my company. And I could go on and on, but that's a place to start. Like that's the pro tip.
We got like 2 minutes. Can you address lateral movement for me?
Yeah. And so all of these, there's this initial access. I'm getting into the organization and just getting some level of good old plain user access. Yeah, just a foothold to start with. And then all of this, I would simplify this whole cycle. I mean, it is there's complicatedness to it, but essentially it's find
ways to do more bad stuff.
Yeah, I get command and control, meaning I start from that initial foothold and have recurring reusable access into the environment. I have that foothold. I can come back. I can go eat lunch as the bad guy, sitting wherever I sit in the world. And I can come back after lunch and I can keep working and just keep looking around. Is this
when you become an advanced persistent threat?
Correct. Yeah, okay. No, not really. The really advanced persistent, that's code for government organizations versus here, these are usually not government organizations. They're just
Dudes.
bad guys, dudes, criminals in other parts of the world. But once I have that toehold, then I'm this cycle, and I like that they showed as a cycle of lateral movement, meaning what else can I get to on this network? And how can I go from being Joe Schmo user in marketing to escalating my privileges up to the point where I have
Hopefully to being a domain admin.
Domain admin. Yep. That I have God access on the network and I can do these other things.
Deploy a GPO to do a bad thing.
Once I have that God access, I can destroy backups. I can get in a position to deploy software to all the computers. And that's how I'm going to make the bad stuff happen. So that's it in a nutshell. I mean, again, I really like this.
This is really helpful. I could see this being a useful discussion in a tabletop drill to walk through each one of these vectors, look at our mechanisms to prevent lateral movement and privilege escalation, and then how we protect against the impacts on the target and how we might, quarantine. And I would be interested, like, is that something that you intend to do with clients who want to, of like, take them through an exercise like this?
Yeah, that absolutely. That tabletopping it for a specific organization would be a great approach and would be something we've done, and we would be, happy.
What if people want to do a tabletop? Can they contact you, or is this kind of like?
Yeah, no, that's a great idea and a great approach. And I would also say, not just as tabletopping, but for folks that are earlier in their security strategies. I mean, we're going to do an episode about NIST, CSF, and about the CIS controls for full, total program security strategy and all the risks. But going back to that, if you're at a point in your security strategy where all you're worried about is ransomware, and there are plenty of people who are there, like, this is your world.
That's not a criticism. That's the world you probably should be living in right now.
Yeah, correct. Then you could build a whole security strategy essentially around this slide. I'm not necessarily advocating that everybody do that. It's not the end, but it certainly could be the beginning.
It's certainly a great place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
Well, I learned a lot today. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for joining from the bunker, and have a great rest of your vacation, man.
Talk to you later, man.
Yep. Take care. Bye.